Good evening all. Sorry about the delay. It's a couple of tech issues, but we're all set to go. Welcome. This is TRH Reconnection Hour by Mr. Perfect. Most of you know I'm Terry, founder and CEO of Mr. Perfect. What is Mr. Perfect? Well, we predominantly are a grassroots charity. We bring men together at barbecues across the country, 30 now, pre-COVID, that create communities and connection for the betterment of mental health and to reduce isolation. Why did we start TRH? Well, we thought it'd be good to not just listen to us talk about mental health and what we're doing, but also talk to other people that might be doing some good in this world, be it in men's health, mental health, or relating to connection, keeping on that positive side of reconnection as well. Update on the week that's been for me. We had our first, or for Mr. Perfect generally, we had our first online barbecue on the weekend on Sunday, which was unbelievable. Trent, our socials guru and one of our barbecue hosts, organised it. I think we had about 20 guys online. About 5 or 6 of them were actually cooking. Saw some great steaks that were being cooked. I had a massive fail. Didn't have any meat in the house, so I had to cook up a wrap, which wasn't so great, but it was really good to catch up with everyone. We saw some of the barbecue hosts. I saw some people who attend barbecues all over the country came on and had a good chat. So really important at this time when we can't do the physical barbecues. Saturday night, I put out a post on the community to everyone to say, look, I've got a ton of t-shirts here, and although I can't give them away all free, thought I'd give away a couple so I could make some room out here in the back. And the amount of people that reached out was amazing. So I spent the week sending them out, which is brilliant. And I hope that gave a few people the lift as well. Also, there's been some incredible activity in the group, the community group, some real good positive things happening, a lot of suggestions about things we can do now at this time in these times of isolation. So I wanted to thank everyone for that as well. But a little bit of a history about Mr. Perfect and how we started. Football, and the title of tonight's is Mentally Healthy Footy. Football was a big part of why we started, or a big vehicle for what we were doing. One of the first things we ever did was hold a kick around in a park for 2 hours and just invited anyone and everyone. We put an ad on Gumtree and meetup.com. We had about 40 guys turn up, all shapes, sizes, abilities. It was a great laugh, kicked the ball around for 2 hours, and we did that for a few weeks, and that morphed into what are now the barbecues, which one way went charity, the other way went our football team, MRPFC, Mr. Perfect FC, which is a huge success. So football's always been at the bedrock of what we've done. I was also supposed to be doing a chat about, or a presentation with my fellow board member, Pete Regan, about mentally healthy footy at the Men's Health Gathering in Melbourne in May, but that's been postponed now until December. So we thought it'd be good to bring this topic forward, I guess, because I was going to chat to this guest anyway about football, and he was going to have a little bit of input on what he's doing as well and how that's helping the guys he plays football with and their mental health. So tonight, without any further delay, we welcome Tim Hewson. He's the founder of the Mongrels, or AKA Seaforth FC over 35s. I met him through some of the Mr. Perfect work I've been doing. He reached out to have a coffee, got on really well, and that was a couple of years ago. Ended up joining his football team recently, played a few games of training, absolute brilliant bunch of guys I've met. He's also supported Mr. Perfect FC in the past and turned up at our charity events and our football tournaments. Has been a great support for us, and it's been quite inspirational watching what he's been doing. Bit of a fitness fanatic, but without saying too much about him, I'll bring him in and say hello to Tim. How you going, mate?
Hey, Terry. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And, you're welcome.
I'll apologise for the delay because it was my fault in trying to get all the tech working on my end. But yeah,
that's
enjoy
fine.
being here.
We're all getting there in this new world now. And so I gave a tiny little bit of info about you and what you do and how we met. But how about you start by telling us more about you first and foremost would be amazing. So your background, where you've come from and where you've been, and how you've ended up here would be amazing.
Yeah, sure. I've lived in Sydney most of my life, but moved around. I moved over to Sydney's Northern Beaches about 12 years ago from the east. And the thing that attracted me to the Northern Beaches was being able to be so close to so many awesome beaches, the open spaces, the national parks. And I was at a very young age when I moved over and had, one son, had another one on the way, and really liked the idea of being able to get out and run around. And being able to get the kids out to a park or down to the beach is free. And when you're young and you're raising a young family and working quite hard, anything that's cost effective for childcare is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I've loved living on the Northern Beaches for the last 12 years for that reason. And part of, I suppose, what I'm doing with Mongrels, whether it's as part of a community or for me personally, is spending as much time as I can out in community and enjoying what the Northern Beaches and the outdoors have to offer. That was until a couple of weeks ago. So obviously the world's changed. So mid-40s, father of three, been working in finance for the last 20 odd years, and more recently founded what we're calling Mongrels Men, and that's a community that is ideally established to improve men's mental and physical well-being through sports exercise and fitness. And that didn't come about through football, but it's mostly being perpetuated through football now. It fundamentally came about because a mate of mine and I were trying to organise a game of golf, and we were busy, we were working, we had young kids. We wanted to book in a round of golf, and we found that we needed to book 3 months in advance to do it, to find a weekend we're both free. So we invited a couple of the mates along, and the two of us then became 8. And once we had 8 people, it became kind of something that needed to be organised. So we all chipped in a couple of bucks, and we bought a tan jacket, the coveted tan jacket, which everybody plays for now every year, and a couple of trophies. And of course, we needed to put a name on the trophy and on the jacket. So we came up with Mongrels because we were such a motley bunch of guys. There were guys from all walks of life, different ages. There was like a 12, 13-year age gap between the oldest and the youngest. And so it started with a game of golf one year, and we got away for a weekend. And, the next year it became 12, and then it was 20, 30, and now we run a golf event that's called the Mongrel Masters every year. We get about 30 to 40 blokes, and these guys come from overseas, they come from interstate. For a lot of them, it's the one chance they actually get to spend 5 solid hours a day with a couple of their mates. And then a mate of mine, Luke, who is the skipper of our team, him and I were standing on the sidelines watching our wives play and our kids play, and we sort of looked at each other and went, what are we doing? Why aren't we getting involved? We were standing on the sidelines cheering every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday for everybody else, and we weren't doing it ourselves. So we started up the soccer team, and that was going back about 6 years ago now. And every year we've been lucky enough to make finals. We've got a couple of grand finals and premierships under our belt. But out of all of this came this overwhelming sense of middle-aged blokes who need an opportunity to connect. And that came out of the golf, it came out of the soccer, a few other things I did around the side, like the Big Bad Wolf ski tours that we do, where guys would get away for a couple of weekends a year. And they all tended to be in and around that middle-aged bracket. And by middle-aged, it can vary, but, anything from sort of mid-30s to mid-40s. And they were kind of craving sport and exercise and activity and connectivity with a community. And it was probably the creation of that community through sport, fitness and exercise that I went, there's kind of something here, and I needed to explore it more. And so, you've probably been exposed to the soccer team, and that's a great bunch of 20 blokes that spend
very
90
vocal
minutes on a pitch.
Especially in the WhatsApp group.
There's a couple of guys that have really good senses of humour, and I think that sort of drags the rest of us along. But there's close to sort of 400 to 500 within the broader network that are mongrels that sort of turn up sporadically over the years too for things like the golfing events, or they move in and out of different things that we'd put on. And it was kind of two things that happened that made me realise that there was something here and that there was a need for connectivity amongst men. And it was the guys that were turning up to the golf events that were reaching out to me going, when's the next event? You know, I've got to book it in. I've got to get my approvals organised. I need 2 to 3 months notice. You know, if the wife's going to let me go, girlfriend or partner, you know, I need to get this stuff organised. And so they were sort of calling out for the time. And for some, it was a weekend away. For some, it was a beer. For some, it was golf. But a lot of them have actually developed friendships within the group because they were strangers beforehand. And then the other thing was, I talked before about going from sideline to playing. I probably went to the extreme where it became playing, coaching, managing, and reffing. And it was through the managing of the Mongrels, the team, that I had a couple of guys come up to me at the end of each season and say, you know, thanks for organising. I wouldn't have got out of the house, or I don't get the time to myself. That 90 minutes that I get to myself is the best part of my week, the most critical part of my week. And there was a couple of guys that, you know, quite confrontingly actually came up and said, you know, I really needed that. I needed that 90 minutes every week. And, you know, it kind of saved my life. You know, there have been guys that have struggled with whether it's mental health or other issues, and they needed that outlet and opportunity for connection. So, you know, my dream is to obviously drive a lot more scale into what we do. And so I'm still at the early stages of testing and learning, you know, different meetups, whether it's, you know, runs and swims or getting out for coffees and chats, and basically just an excuse to get guys together and having a chat.
Well, I remember when you first reached out to me and we had a coffee and you sort of asked, you know, how did you go about the Mr. Perfect thing or the football team, Mr. Perfect FC? And I didn't really have like a great answer, because I remember thinking we thought it was a good idea because we realised, me and my mate Pete, that we love football. We were pretty sick of paying. We were playing a different, won't name the area, but we were playing a different football association that was charging us $500 a year to essentially, you were told how it went. The rules, they changed every week. If there was a tiny bit of, the mud was a little bit sticky, the game was called off. If the mud was too hard, the game was called off. We just got sick of it. We said, look, we know about football, let's try and set something up. And when you asked me, I didn't realise like the process we went through to get there. So it was really it was brilliant to actually, I don't think anyone had asked me how we did it before. So it was good to go through it. And then when I realised what it was, for me, it was the process. It wasn't the football. The football's the football. Like, I enjoy football, but what happened out of the, you know, Mr. Perfect FC, the people coming up to you, you just mirrored exactly what happened with us. People would come up after the game, or in the, you know, in the pub after the game, or our end of season drinks was always a big one, because people would always have a few drinks and they get a bit emotional afterwards. But they come up to Pete and say, you know, I don't know what I've done without this, and like, you guys saved me, and blah blah. It's just like, whoa. And that was only then when we really pat ourselves in the back and went, wow. And I can feel that in the way you describe that. Like, the football's the football, but what do you think it's actually about? I guess football or soccer, maybe in Sydney, that makes people connect, or makes men come to you to connect.
Yeah, and maybe it is something as simple as that 90 minutes. It's time to myself. And although they describe it as time to myself and they're surrounded by 11 other players, or, you know, 8 other guys on the sideline, there's always plenty of blokes around. It's that I'm not a father, I'm not a brother, I'm not a husband, I'm not running a business. I don't have people that report to me that I'm having to manage. I'm actually out here, and yes, I'm part of something bigger, and I'm a team. I'm part of a team. And I think it's probably those things. You know, they're sort of they're craving connection, but they're also craving time to themselves. I think, you know, if I give you an example of my life, you know, I spent all my 20s, you know, enjoying myself and socialising. I met my then wife, and then you know, you end up then just focusing on developing a whole new almost life stage. It's marriage, kids, work, and for me in my 30s, and it's kind of common with a lot of guys that I talk to, you kind of just throw yourself into it, and you gain so much, but you also lose a lot. And it's almost like you wake up in your 40s and you go, where are all my friends? What's happening with my career? And where's all my hair gone? And you sort of start to wonder how all of these things have changed so quickly and how you've lost 10 years of your life. And so for me, and I think for a lot of the guys that I talk to, football and sport and exercise and connection through that social aspect, whether it's a group activity or getting out and doing some exercise yourself, it's kind of a lot like therapy. But it's good for you physically, not just mentally as well. And so football for me and the group of guys that we play with and the friendships that are being developed out of that has driven a lot of connection. And if you think about the essence of being a mongrel, you're not perfect. There's it's all about the mental tenacity to fight and be stronger and overcome challenges. There's a lot of aspects of strength within a pack, and I think some of those team sports obviously bring a lot of those things out, and you get the benefit of social connectivity as a result of that. And I don't think blokes are really good at reaching out, more broadly, and this kind of gives them an excuse or a distraction, or it's something that they did as a kid and they want to get back into it for health or other reasons. So for me, I really feel when I'm not exercising in at the moment, the WhatsApp group that the Mongrels are on, there's lots of chat and it's throwing each other, lots of funny stuff, but it's chit chat, it's reaching out. And another good example is, one of the guys who works in the building industry, finding it a bit tough. He reaches out tonight to a group of 20 odd blokes to help him. And so it kind of creates that opportunity for that connection. But I think me and a lot of other guys in their 40s kind of get to that stage and they end up craving it, whether they know about it or not. And then you sort of get involved and entwined and it becomes a bit of a community. And out of that community comes, a lot of really good things, whether it's friendships or better mental health. And, that's, I suppose, part of the mongrel value is you've got a group of mates there that you can kind of lean on, you trust them, you can ask them the difficult questions, that they're going to ask you those questions, and sometimes you have to be the guy that asks those questions, and that's what mates and mongrels are meant to be for. But they're there for a hit out at the gym or a run or to move a fridge or to help you find some work if you kind of need it. And I think there's a lot of power in that self-sustaining community where you might need some financial advice and there's an advisor in the group, so you tap them on the shoulder and ask a couple of questions, or you need someone to fix a cabinet, so there's a chippy that you can have a chat to, or an electrician that can change a light bulb for you.
I was just my personal experience of the Mongrels already, like it's been very short-lived, and I was just saying to you yesterday when we spoke on the phone, to have 3 weeks of just pure training and although we were just playing a game, 90 minutes solid of it, or maybe a little bit longer, I came away from that exhausted physically, but feeling unbelievable. I mean, my wife knew, when I got home, I was buzzing, and I couldn't, she knows that because I come in and she's trying to watch Netflix and I want to tell her all about it. And I remember that first feeling of coming from the first training session with you guys, and not to big everyone up too much, but I went there going, I don't think, and I'm beating myself up before I even turn up. Nervous, I'm anxious, I'm thinking, are they actually going to talk to me? What am I actually going to say when they ask me where I'm, and ask my story and everything? And I'm going, I played all that on my head in the lead up to the first training session. And then I remember being in the car, putting my boots on, thinking, all right, I'll go out in a second. And then you text me to say, my only link, oh, actually, I'm not going to be there tonight. And I went, oh, shit. That made it even worse. I was thinking, no, you can do this. And I went out. And I remember walking up to the first few people who were there and introducing myself. And I just was blown away, really, just friendly, everything else. And I remember thinking within half an hour of chatting to everyone and keeping football, this is incredible. And just in those just 3 weeks of training, there was guys that I met asked about the kids, and we talked about family and what they like to do on the weekends, and their jobs, and all sorts of things, just apart from the football as well. And I heard about a guy who just had a baby when he turned up, and all you guys gathered around and got him like a present, and other things that are happening. And then in the WhatsApp group tonight, we're reading about one of the guys who's lost some work, and already you can feel that overwhelming feeling of that connection. And I think that's what that does. I'm sure other football clubs of this, there's probably many others that do the same, but I was very overwhelmed by it all. But like, wow, already I feel like this is incredible. Like you feel at home immediately. And I think because I've had my experience with football has been played all my life up till sort of 30, had a couple of years on and off because I wasn't really enjoying it. And the team I played with are incredible, but I was the only one in the team, I think, that had kids. Probably when I think about it now, I'd started to have kids and then everyone else was younger. And although they're all incredible lads and they were more like my brothers and sons than my co-teammates, I couldn't really connect. Like I was coming off the pitch and going, I've got to get home. I've got to drive all the way from West Sydney back to Northern Beaches. So I was almost certain I was ready for that next evolution of, now I'm 36 and probably the youngest in the team. But that was incredible, the feeling I got when I turned up. Yeah. So it's actually an absolute bummer now that this football season has been put on hold, and then we don't know now whether it will be gone completely. Who knows? What will that do? And Pete, the co-founder of Mr. Perfect FC and on the board of Mr. Perfect, he texted me just before and said, make sure you talk about this with Tim. Like we've just got an email from the Canterbury League saying it's been, and he's obviously gutted by it. So what do you think that affects? So for everyone out there just who doesn't know, all of the soccer leagues in Sydney have been postponed. Essentially, we don't know when they'll get running again. They did it from one day and now they've pushed it back, I think, to the 1st of June maybe, or roughly then for June. But they've also put a little caveat to say it might get pushed back. But what do you think will be the knock-on effect to that?
Yeah, if I think back to the chatter that was on the WhatsApp group when the announcement was first made, it was, it was disappointment. The guys were kind of trying to figure out, well, what do we do? We just, we'd got to peak training performance, a couple of weeks beforehand, waiting for our preseason games, and even the guys, the other teams that we had the preseason games up against were kind of really disappointed. But very quickly turned around, and we've started to do a lot of and send videos in of each other doing physical challenges. You've seen the Wallabies do the toilet paper juggling challenge, and the Mongrels are kind of doing the same thing. In addition to just sort of sharing funny videos, there's lots of stories being told, lots of funny jokes being told. And as disappointing as it is, and we all sort of feel the same way, and if you let it get you down, it will. And there is a real threat that people don't get out and don't exercise, and it can't improve physical and mental health. But what I noticed quite quickly is we turned the negative into a positive, and we started to share those opportunities that we've created for ourselves, like juggling toilet paper rolls in Ugg boots, and how many keep-ups can we do? We're sharing exercise regimes. There was one of the guys shared one of the high intensity regimes that can be done sort of quite quickly, 15-30 minute sessions at home. I've got a personal goal this year to raise $10,000 for men's mental health, and in Q1 I did a 100-kilometre challenge with some of the Mongrels groups. I did an 80-kilometre walk, and that was kind of my Q1 challenge, and I did a couple of fun runs and virtual runs to finish it off. This quarter I'm doing, I've challenged myself to do a handstand walk for 27 metres, so the full length of a cricket pitch. Yeah. So I'll keep the Mongrels up to date with that, as well as sharing any ad hoc yoga and Pilates sessions that I do. Yeah. But it's kind of the group have started to share information to share what works for them, and I think that's still creating connection, although it's virtual, and it's still encouraging them to actually keep fit, stay fit, and do stuff that's good for them. And it's kind of a reminder that the season might kick off at any point, so don't let yourself go, even though you're locked into hibernation.
Exactly.
but it's probably just the social interaction between everybody in the group that sort of keeps things a lot more positive and engaging, and encourages you to sort of keep fit and active. And that's not just going to benefit the whole team, but it benefits the individual, physically, mentally, etc.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of the challenge of, I suppose, the new world that we find ourselves in is, how we choose to adjust, and the getting outside, the physical aspect is obviously a big one for a lot of people, and a lot of people are used to going to gyms or group exercises, and now they've got to either do it in isolation or with their family or by themselves. And if they're doing it by themselves, a lot of people that I've spoken to have found it quite challenging. And so beyond the Mongrels, the conversations that we have at work, and I work at ING, so we've got about 1,600 employees. Quick call into HR. Here's what my team are struggling with. So they've developed what they call Wellbeing Wednesdays, where they'll do a yoga session or something about eating healthy or something about activities and exercise, or they'll get somebody like a Chelsea Pottinger from EQ to talk about the body hacks and the mind hacks that you can do to just perpetuate better mental health. But everyone's reaching out, trying to help one another, and I think that's sort of kind of cool, and it speaks to the broader community, not just within the individual of the team.
Definitely.
So, I think the challenges for the Mongrels is how we keep that level of enthusiasm up. And there's some guys in the group that just don't have great senses of humour, and sometimes circulate stuff that's not that funny. So, you just need to encourage them. You just need to encourage them.
Yeah. No, it's funny, actually. I was gutted, obviously, when the football season was, because I'm just getting back into it. And I just said to my wife, this is my routine again. And this is, but ultimately, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, when I spoke to my psychologist last, I sold him this thing of I'm back in my routine. I'm playing football. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And he stopped me and he said, Terry, those are just activities. That's very good that you have a routine, and it's brilliant that you keep on that. But you do have to go a little bit deeper as well. There are going to be some other things you need to work on, and and it kind of it did make me stop and go, football or no football, if I'm not keeping mentally well, or at least making sure I'm staying on top of things regardless, because no one knew this was coming. No one was probably that prepared for it. Even the guys like yourself who are, out there most days working out or running or doing something active, if anything, it probably hits you harder because this just completely throws you off a bit. So you've got to be a bit creative. And that's why I started doing, back into doing just really basic yoga at lunchtime, which has helped me no end. And it isn't the actual physical bit because I do it terribly. It's definitely the breathing part and just saying, Terry, take a breath for a moment, realize what you're actually, none of this matters at the moment, calm, get yourself focused. I think that's the best thing. That's what I've realized for me. You just have to be a little bit more creative, and that's the physical part, but the social part, things like WhatsApp, the group, and the sort of chatter I've seen, and the guys reaching out, I think it's brilliant. Every single day there's not a day that goes past where you haven't got that connection with someone in the group, which is brilliant. But I guess I was going to ask, I was thinking while I was talking about sort of the deeper connection, outside of the, or for yourself then, I guess, what do you do? What's your reaction when if you're struggling mentally or you have done in the past, how do you, for the benefit of everyone listening, because I watched sort of what you've been doing over the last couple of years and go, wow, how does he have the energy and motivation and everything else to do? Maybe you just can't bottle that and give it to someone, but talk about how you get yourself into that headspace to go out and do that run, or what drives you, I guess.
What started me doing exercise in the first place was when I gave up smoking a long time ago. The day I gave up smoking was the day I actually started running, and I decided to push and challenge myself just by doing 4 or 5K sprints as quickly as I could, and just keep challenging myself. Then as I got kids, it was I'm reasonably competitive, so I flatly refuse to be the last guy in the egg and spoon or the sack race. So then it was keeping fit for that reason.
Yeah.
And now it's soccer in general, mental health and well-being. And if I'm not exercising, I'm not you talked about routine. If I'm not in that place, then things start to get on top of you, whether it's excessive work or you're not sleeping, you're up late at night, or everyone's got stresses, different kinds of stresses in their lives, and it's very easy when things change, in particular like now, to let that stuff sort of cave in on top of you, feel like it's insurmountable and hard to break down. So I kind of go back to the basics, where I just make sure I'm eating well, I make sure I'm getting enough sleep, and that's hard for me because I can survive on 6 hours sleep a night, months on end. But even this week, I've had to go back to getting into bed at 9:30, reading a book for half an hour, getting away from TV screens and blue lights on my phone before bed, so that I start to get into the right rhythm before I go to sleep. And that's getting to bed at 9:30 for me that's a massive deal. I wouldn't go to bed till 11:30, 12 o'clock most nights, and it took me a couple of nights to actually feel good. So on top of eating well and sleeping well, it's doing the other things to sort of look after yourself. And you touched on them. So exercise is one of them. So I'll surf the coffee table out. I'll put a YouTube Pilates session on. And as weird as that feels, because I'm used to doing group environments, it's very easy to get back into the routine and realize why and how it makes you feel good. It just takes a couple of days to sort of get there. But the routine part, I think, is probably the hardest part, because that's what's changed a lot over the course of the last couple of weeks. And so that's why, for me, it's to go back to the basics, even if it means kind of recalibrating things, because unless I'm exercising regularly, I kind of start to feel it. And I was never really conscious of that before I started to think about some of the mental health challenges that I've had in the past and going back a few years ago. And I kind of used to isolate those as things that used to happen back then in the old me. But they surface all the time. And it's when things change, when you get out of routine and when you're not looking after yourself. So that's kind of the why I do it. And if I can share that through sports and community and other activity, I will. To give you another example, I just sort of started Mongrels meetups. I'm going to say about a month or two ago, where a mate of mine and I, he's having some challenges. I said to him, why don't we just meet up for a run, just do a soft sand run, a swim and a coffee. And for him, it was about getting fit, getting him out of the house. He just needed someone to talk to about some of his challenges. And we just sort of started to build a bit of momentum, and then of course we ended up going to isolation. Now, you can still sort of run in groups of two. It's kind of frowned upon to be outside, but he's reaching out to me still sort of 2-3 times a week because he needs that. So, and that's because he can't go and do his own thing anymore. He's not in an environment where he can kind of do it. So, the conversations we're having are, eat, sleep, condense your work down, compartmentalize things, still get out and do it. And I'll be there. If you need to go for a run, you can still 2x2 as long as you keep your distance. So that's kind of, I suppose that, getting back to basics is the short answer to your question.
It's brilliant. And I think when, it's a funny thing to say, maybe why I took a sort of shine to you and sort of liking, I saw in you, I'm going to embarrass him now, but our chair of Mr. Perfect, Gordon, who works for Westpac, comes from probably a similar background. I think he's a similar age. I won't offend you by saying how old he is, but I think he is. He's and he actually looks quite similar. He is the most positive man. He runs a lot, works out a lot, went through some challenges, a time in life when he's, a little bit of a crisis, I guess, but come through them the other side incredibly. And I met him by pure chance on a thing called the Growth Project, which we did with Mr. Perfect, which was sponsored by CBA. And they put you with a mentor. It was like charity and a business leader. And I met him through that. And the thing I found from him was, and it's exactly what you just said about what you've done for your mate there. He, one, would always be there regardless. That we just got closer over the last 2 years, and you could just reach out and ask anything. And he now will, I can almost tell it after our board meetings, like will deliberately pose those questions to you about, no, like what is seriously going on? And like he'll look you in the eye and he'll say, what do you need? Like, what can I do? Do you need to do this? But on the flip side, his positivity and his energy, although we can talk about the serious stuff, the exercise for him, he says, if I don't do it 6 times a week, like exercise, then like I can feel myself, if he doesn't get that consistent routine. So there's that side of it that keeps him going, but the other side is he's always there to go, I think it's just being selfless, right? And I see that I get my sort of kicks from helping others as well, and I can see that from you, and I can see that from him as well. There's got to be that balance, though, I think is my point. Like you can be really helpful to others, you can be positive as you want, you can do all the things you want, work out what you want as well. But when it comes down to it and you need help or you're struggling, and you're probably like me and like him, where we're probably a bit stubborn and we are a bit hypocrites, so we probably don't always reach out when we need to. What do you do when you're sort of struggling? If there isn't that outlet of exercise, how do you go about it? How can you reach out? Or
yeah, and it took me a long time to sort of get to this stage, and I probably learnt that lesson, the hard way, by kind of not reaching out and for a long time sort of just digging internally. And as an introvert, you kind of do that a lot anyway.
Yes.
Which is the irony of wanting to create social connection when you need it. You kind of really need it. And it struck me a long time ago when I was sitting on a chairlift with a mate of mine, and we're on one of the Big Bad Wolf ski tours that we organise, where we take eight blokes away. And these are guys that I've known for 30 years of my life. One of them I'd consider to be one of my really good friends, and we just jumped on the chairlift, and he said, I kind of need to chat to you about something. And he told me a whole series of things that I had sort of never even contemplated, from outside looking in, sort of the perfect life, great wife, great job, life, kids, house, whatever, all those material things. He was fit and healthy, and but around him his life was sort of crumbling, and it kind of took him to open up to me, for me to go, oh right, okay, so he's kind of given me permission now to have that conversation. And it was the same with me. When I was going through some challenging times, I had a lot of guys reach out to me because they sort of went, all right, well, he's in that spot. I kind of feel safe now to be able to ask those questions, or seek some counsel or some. I never get out of advice, but it's more around to ask me the tough questions. And so, one beer an hour was normally what I'd charge. No answers, just questions. But out of those environments has probably come a network of people, and family and partners that I feel as though I can now ask those questions to. And it's a safe space. It's kind of, you can't have those conversations with everybody, and I'll give you an example as to why in a minute. But it takes some time to actually develop that. Unless you ask for it, you sort of feel like you need the permission to do it. You sort of feel like somebody needs to open up. And the example is, it's probably a little bit about fear. It's probably a little bit about shame or confidence, or the threat of being judged, or whatever it might be. People are different in terms of the reasons why they might not ask for help, or they don't know where to start. They don't have time. There's lots of reasons. But I did a fundraising for men's mental health as a test with the golf event a couple of years ago, and I'd never done it. Been meaning to do it for years. Mongrels men were sort of just all coming together, and I thought, I'm just going to test this out. So I did it. Stood up, very public discussion around facts and figures and how challenging we are. And I know for a fact there's guys in this group that have some pretty significant problems, challenges, I should say. Severe bipolar through to the on and off depression. And they were the guys that would probably come up and go, yeah, mate, let's donate. I've wanted to do something like this for years. But there were a lot of guys that came up and I went, I'll give you $100. but just don't tell anybody I gave it to you because I don't want anybody to think there's a problem. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? He goes, I just don't want anybody to know. And it kind of struck me that although it was for a good cause, people don't always like to open up about things that they find challenging because of the way that they might be perceived. And I still think it comes back to a willingness or a sense of embarrassment or fear, but it's permission. And if that permission comes from a safe space because it's about trust and community of network and support of the people that you've got around you, love you, family, friends, all that sort of stuff. I know that there's been some pretty tough conversations had amongst some of the Mongrels who have been through some challenging times. So, they know that they're there. They know that tough questions have been asked on and off the footy field. And it's probably been the permission of those friendships that have been developed and the connection that's been developed through, a few years of hanging out together that they've had the permission to open up. So, sometimes it's easy because there's those people in your life, and sometimes you've actually got to go and find them, and that might be professional help, or it might be a friend, or someone who's been through a similar experience. But you kind of want to be challenged. You don't want people that are just going to tell you what you want to hear to make you feel better. You kind of need someone who's going to ask you questions, and it's kind of not the beers and bullshit. Right, like it's digging underneath the surface. It's too easy to go and have a couple of beers, have a few laughs, throw your arm around someone, go, "Love you, mate," and it's all done. Like that's not even scratching the surface. So you kind of need to get out and challenge.
Well, there's like that. As you're saying it, I'm thinking there's like that. What can I call it? You've got this veneer that we all now know what the problem is. We all talk about it openly. Well, not everyone, but everyone has an opinion on it and supports it and wants to get behind it, anything to do with mental health awareness. And I don't love that word, but everyone wants to get, but underneath that, we all truly know that there's a good chunk of people there that still have not, they're saying, oh yeah, I'm behind it and doing this is great what you're doing and blah, blah. But from probably your connections through the Mongrels, mine through my mates and through the football team and through the amount that in that group would have what we would deem a serious challenge at that time or in the past or that's coming at that moment. And I found it strange that I hit 30 and then I've never really had this conversation with anyone. So I went the other way, went straight to the health professional, and then they put me up to a psychiatrist, and then they said, no, go here. And then it all felt too clinical, and I never got that deep conversation. So it kind of went in a roundabout way. So I had those friends that I had to be with, and they went, oh yeah, love you, Tal, love you. At the end of the night, whatever, oh, we're fine. And we talk a little bit about it, and we've come full circle. Do you know what? It's taken, God knows how many years, 10 years, right? Some of my closest mates and the guys involved in Mr. Perfect, for us to sit there recently after our board meeting 2 months ago, a month ago. And I just went, all right, sod this. I'm just going to sort of put it out there in the group, in one breath of conversation, talking about what we're up to. And then I said, oh yeah. And then I saw my psychologist this week, and then this happened, and he talked about this. And one of the guys I didn't even expect to say anything said, and you could see it was wearing away in his mind, and I've known him 10 years. And then he said, yeah, well, actually, I'm trying this treatment and blah, blah. And we talked about that, and it just flowed nicely. And after the board meeting, we had two of us stick around, including the chair, Gordon, had the best chat. One of them was going through a really difficult time. I thought, wow, like we're getting somewhere, but it's taken a decade. Like this wasn't, let's talk about mental health, everyone, go for it. Let's feel comfortable. It's taken people different times, everyone is at this different space. So for me, it was just comforting to see that I know the people I can reach out to and talk to, but ironically, they tend to be people I've only just met or I don't know that well, I feel comfortable with. And I get a really good connection regardless of the time length. But the time it's taken just to get that group of people to really, truly talk on that deep level, it takes time and effort and like intent. And like you said, you've really got to fumble around for that. Yeah, I don't know. It's not necessarily the right moment, but not everyone's ready to talk about it right then. And some won't be for a long time. But when you create somewhere safe like that, which I wasn't really intentionally doing, but I kind of did, the result I saw after it was amazing. So I think that's I guess what happens over time with things like the Mongrels, would you say 6 years together? That's a sort of substantial amount of time now to form those bonds that I'm sure there's quite a few people there that would feel comfortable, reaching out. I'm sure there was a proportion who wouldn't either and say they would, but they wouldn't. But at least in the comfort, if you keep preaching this message in a, gentle way, that they know they've got somewhere to go or to reach out to, or to send you a text after this and say, Tim, man, that was incredible, like what you just talked about. So I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's probably just the opportunity. It probably just is as much as simple as you can make it. It's the opportunity. If it's the person, if it's the right time, if it's the right space, and then it's the trust, right? Because you kind of break that. You've got to earn that trust, and if you break it, you lose it very quickly. So. You've also got to earn it, and that's probably why it takes time to 10 years in your case for some of these conversations to come full circle, or a few years for some of the guys in our team to have some of those conversations. And it's kind of only occurs when they
conversations here. You've got, I thought I'd have to put this one in. Got John here saying you vouch for the last comment, member of the Mongrels, and that some of the things that the Mongrels have provided for him were obviously key. He's vouched for that there. Also got John, who said when he's felt though he wanted to reach out, you do worry that other people have got their own issues as well, and you tend to then be inside and keep it inside. But I feel like having that progress over time, you can't expect overnight just to have someone there that you can feel comfortable with. It's going to take time, basically. Absolutely. But the hope is there, like from those two comments, there's people there like who will listen, and if you feel safe with and they feel safe with, there's tons of people there to talk to about it. And I think also leading back to the Mongrels, I guess I wanted to ask you you mentioned sort of the events you've done, and obviously there's the football team, the Mongrels, but there's also the wider group and what you've done with the events. What's next on the cards for the Mongrels?
Yeah, it's probably just trying to scale the opportunity. It's not necessarily changing what I'm doing around the golf events or the soccer team. I mean, we've adapted that to take groups to go and play in different charity competitions and do different things. It's probably trying to drive scale and broader reach outside of that group. So leveraging what we've got and what works, whether it's some of the people that are part of that Mongrels community already, or creating new. So at the moment I'm working off at Mongrels Men Instagram page. I want to obviously sort of develop a shop front website and put together a Facebook page, broader reach, sort of cross-fertilize my personal with that as well, but also then leverage the 400 or 500 that I've got that have intermittently moved out of things like the golf to develop a community. And the community for me is it's kind of evolving, but the idea is with connection and the social aspect obviously comes opportunities to meet and grow, change, evolve, or solve issues or challenges. So I can't be all things to all people. I can't organise 100 events a year, but there's already a lot of really good events on there, whether they're in and around this space or fun runs are a good example. So next stop is to partner up with someone to help probably fund a couple of these things, get some merchandise so that we can actually have Mongrels physically and visibly represented as a pack, as a group, participating in events, and then just sort of develop a centralised hub where this event's happening. These guys from the Mongrels will be participating. Buy a singlet, run in this event, play lawn bowls with these guys. Go and have a surf on a Friday morning, and just try and create a bit of community and belonging through more of a visual representation, which is kind of that feeling of the pack, but it's also letting people know that they're out there, and to try and drive the awareness back into the group. So that's kind of next step for me, and it's on my very short list of 25 personal goals that I want to achieve this year. So that's, it's something I'm kind of passionate about, test and learn. And, if I'm pretty confident it will work in some way, shape or form, and it will evolve over time. But reaching more people, helping more people is probably the key.
I love it. And how do people find out more about the Mongrels and what you're doing?
Yeah, at the moment, jump on to Instagram at Mongrels Men. That'll give you a highlight of the sort of activities that we're doing. I'll be branching that out, as I said, with website and Facebook, and then the website and socials will be used for sort of driving activity around things that the Mongrels will be participating in, whether it's charity events, fun runs, and just encouraging groups to kind of turn up together, grab a t-shirt or a running single or whatever it is, and participate.
No, that's brilliant. And like we're about to wrap up shortly, but I just wanted to say I've learned more about Mongrels and Mongrels Men tonight, which is amazing. I would have learned more, of course, if the football season had carried on and we'd be having our training every Tuesday night. But I just really appreciate that. I'm sure we could have chatted for longer, and hopefully in a few months' time, when you get a bit of traction, or we'll be able to help with that as well, no doubt. And hopefully the football season gets going. We'll have you back on. You can tell us where it's going. But one last thing I usually ask is, what's your kind of, I don't say advice because I hate that word and I'm sure it's misused in a way, but what would be your kind of final thoughts, comments to particularly men who need connection right now or need something? What would you leave them with?
Yeah, probably three things, and I talked about it before, but it's getting back to basics. Whether it's eating, sleeping, just treating yourself with a little respect in terms of knowing what's good for you and doing those things. The second thing is probably that there's a lot of research out there, and certainly from my own experience, we've talked about it tonight. The proof is in the pudding in terms of exercise and movement leading to better well-being physically and mentally. And the only other thing I'd probably challenge everyone to do is to sort of try something different, whether that's opening up and having a chat, or taking a risk and asking someone a difficult question when they know that that's not the question that needs to be asked, or you can see that it needs to be asked. So that's for me part of the challenge that I probably try and live by. I have been more so in the recent years. So pick any one of those three or try them all.
Brilliant. No, I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you again for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
It's been TRH Reconnection Hour. We'll see you again next week as well with a new guest. And make sure you go and check out Mongrels and Mongrels Men and everything they're doing. And you're probably going to hear a little bit more about it as well, because I'll be involved as well. So, everyone stay connected, especially during this time. And, comment below what you thought of this. And, we'll take care, and we'll see you soon. Cheers, Tim.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.